we doing, SDG Action Zone? All righty, thank you for watching the Small Island Developing States Summit with us. It is now time for another session here live with you. So it is my pleasure to introduce the next session, which is titled Garnering Philanthropic and Private Sector Support to Achieve the SDGs in the Caribbean. Our host is the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance, and I'm actually going to call the panel up and then introduce the extra special moderator to have the conversation with you. So please welcome to the stage a student at Dalhousie University and from the Climate Reality Project and Dalhousie Caribbean Connection, Chaz Garraway. The CEO and president of GKMS Group and CEO of Grace Kennedy Financial Group, Grace Burnett. A student at Princeton University and a Grace Kennedy Birthright Ambassador, Manelik Graham. A co-founder and board secretary of Haiti Community Trust, Professor Marie Nicholas. You can do better than that for Marie. Okay. We don't take any lulls in energy here in the Action Zone. And the president and co-founder of the Media Institute of the Caribbean, Kiran Maharaj. And finally, our extra special moderator from the Lasco Foundation, which does work on poverty and crime, focusing on young people in Jamaica and the Caribbean. Please welcome CEO of Lasco Foundation, Rosa Lee Hamilton. And now I'm
very much. Let me get a Caribbean welcome here.
Woo!
How you feeling? You feeling airy? All right, great. We have a fabulous panel here. You know, we've traveled from the Caribbean because we wanted to be here to join the world in going after these very ambitious goals. We want to change humanity. That's what these 17 goals are about. We feel that Goal 17 is absolutely necessary for us. As small island states, we need partnerships. And so we've brought together corporate leaders, philanthropists from all over the Caribbean, and we're here because we're creating a very special organization called the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance. It's a new organization, yeah, and we're going to rock, right? So we have, as collectively, been tackling a number of challenges in the region. Many of our countries are indebted. In fact, 12 out of 19 Caribbean countries are below the level of sustainable debt that the IMF has set for us. We have a range of social issues, high inequality. Many of our countries are among the highest in the hemisphere. In terms of murders, we are among the most murderous region in the world. With only about 9% of the population, the Latin America and the Caribbean accounts for nearly 40% of murders across the world. And of the top 12 countries, 7 of them are Caribbean states. And so we're concerned about those troubles and these problems and these challenges, and all of this is exacerbated by climate change. Now, we have heard about Dorian. We know the issues there. So we're going to start by talking about the climate change problem. And we're going to go to a quick video, and you're going to just see a glimpse of what we've been dealing with in the Caribbean.
In 2017, 2 monsters gripped the Caribbean region, leaving a trail of devastation and despair: Hurricanes Irma and Maria. It's now 2018, and another hurricane season is on its way. Hope is frail. The real challenge is the rebuild. The race is on to save lives and homes. It's an urgent need. For the Caribbean, millions of people are at the mercy, and islands can be lost, almost extinct.
Across many of the islands hardest hit by the hurricanes of 2017, the desperation is still writ large on the faces of the people. Many of them have lost their homes. The blue tarps that you see everywhere on rooftops symbolize people who are unable to afford to rebuild those roofs.
It will take each one of us to help save paradise. This is the story of what looms and how we can all help. Paradise in peril, rebuilding homes and hope.
Okay, so I'm going to start with our panel, and we're going to ask, what do each of the panelists see as the most pressing challenge facing the Caribbean over the next 10 years? And I want to start with the youngest panelist, Chaz Garway, and he's from the Bahamas. So he will tell us his perspective as to what he sees as the most challenging issue.
Firstly, a pleasant good morning to everyone here and to those joining on the live stream. I think, in my opinion, climate change is the number one issue that the Caribbean will face in the coming years. And I think it's by just looking at 2019 alone. 2019 was the fourth consecutive year of a Category 5 hurricane forming in the Atlantic Ocean and causing absolute havoc to Caribbean states. When Hurricane Dorian was rampaged through the northern Bahamas, it had maximum sustained winds of 185 miles an hour. This caused over 90% of homes, businesses to be absolutely destroyed on the island of Abaco. And on the island of Grand Bahama, over 70% of the island was completely underwater, as seen from images from space. It was very heartbreaking to me as I watched from abroad. The videos come in hour after hour of just waves taking people's lives, taking people's homes, their livelihoods. It felt like part of me was being taken away, as part of my country was being destroyed. And we were so helpless just watching it, not being able to do anything. It just left me speechless how much devastation was caused after 40 plus hours of I've never seen, of all my years of dealing with hurricanes and tracking hurricanes, I've never seen a report to say stationary on the movement of a hurricane. And that's unprecedented. The fact that listening to voice notes of families crying out for their loved ones, and even people who weren't exactly in the islands that were affected, but people in other islands, people abroad like myself, just feeling so much anxiety, not knowing what's the state of your family members, your loved ones, not hearing from them, not knowing if they're still alive, seeing the floating bodies of people with thousands of people still missing. I think there's a story of a man from Abaco who was flown into the capital, where he was at the hospital and he rejected treatment because all of his family were killed in the storm, and he lost all his property and his home. And he said, what's the point of keep going? He rejected the treatment, and I think that sums up how terrifying and how traumatic these experiences can be, because they're permanent. It leaves a permanent mark with you for the rest of your life.
Thank you very much. Climate change is real. Now, Grace, what do you see as the greatest challenge faces the region?
As someone who has been in the insurance business for over 30 years, I understand fully what Chaz is talking about. But I also want us to focus on, we were very involved in what happened in Dominica in 2017. And the truth is, since 2005, when we had Katrina and Wilma, 2017 and 2018, even though we don't talk about it, have been two of the most costliest years for natural catastrophes. 2019 is still to be determined. And so I want us to think about what is going to be the response, and how do we sometimes, as people, prepare ourselves for some of these eventualities as we try to prevent them, so that we can recover much faster. And I'll talk about a little bit about that when we go on. And secondly, for me, what we're doing in the area of financial inclusion. The statistics show that in Jamaica, 80% of the population have very little access to user-friendly advice and access to financial advice and services that will help to improve their lives. And some of those things will actually address some of the issues around climate change and the impacts. So it's something I feel very strongly about. What are we doing about financial inclusion?
Now, Menelik, you are one of the second youngest person on the chat. How do young people see the future? Are you afraid?
No, yes, of course. To kind of echo that thought about financial inclusion, I'd just like to say I think one big problem facing young people especially is financial opportunity. So last semester, I actually had the opportunity to study at the University of West Indies. I was doing research for my thesis that I will be doing this upcoming year. And one of the biggest complaints I saw from both undergraduate students and graduate students was that there was just a lack of opportunity once they graduated their tertiary institutions going into the workforce. They felt as if either the jobs weren't there or the jobs that were there didn't fit their skill set. And obviously the next move to that is, well, if they're not in the Caribbean, I must go abroad. And that kind of thought process is going to create a huge problem of brain drain, where we have a lot of the talented people who should be moving the Caribbean forward, who should be leading us into that next stage, are leaving to go abroad for the opportunities that fit their skill set. So I think that one problem that needs to be tackled is how can we create these opportunities to keep these young people here, to keep young people motivated to want to build the Caribbean and invest in it.
Very important point. In fact, the average unemployment rate in the Caribbean is about 25%, and in some communities it's as high as 70 and 80%, depending on the community. So yes, that's a very important issue. Let me go to Professor Nicholas from University of Miami. I know you've been doing a lot of work in poverty. What do you see as the greatest challenge facing the region?
Thank you so very much. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you so much. I think for me, I couch as a Haitian born, and I spend most of my time in Haiti, to the Haiti Community Trust, the foundation that we have. I want to think about this on a larger scale, because I think all of the areas that you've heard my colleagues mention as the importance of addressing are key. But they fall for me around three main areas when we look at the Human Development Index. The Human Development Index, created by the United Nations many years ago, allow us the opportunity to talk about the importance of life. Life expectancy becomes really crucial. The education is the second major part of that Human Development Index. And the third is the economic development, which all of us talking about. So for me, on the Haiti side, I think we see these three things as being really crucial for us to address. Because as I'm listening to our young colleague on the panel talking about the situation in the Bahamas, well, it turns out that 90% of the people who are affected by the storm in the Bahamas are Haitians, right? And so the question is to ask, right, so what are Haitians doing in the Bahamas, right? And what would it take, what is happening in nation state in Haiti in terms of economic development, in terms of education opportunities that will enable societies to thrive and develop, right? And so for me, thinking about the region and thinking about these three areas as being central component for us to address, I think would lead us to the next, another level in conversations.
Of course. And our last panelist is a young, dynamic woman from Trinidad and Tobago, Kiran Maharaj. Kiran, what do you see as the greatest challenge facing the region?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for saying I'm young. I think I'm so perpetually. I think that definitely education, public education is key. When you look at our school systems, they definitely do not hit home with getting people to understand the significance of a lot of these key issues, not just climate change, but there are many other issues impacting our region. But more so, I want to say that I think women have to be more included in the decision-making process. And we could get a bigger round of applause for the ladies. Traditionally and by our nature, we are caregivers and caretakers. We understand what happens on the ground. We are the ones who have that impact mentally and emotionally on all of our generations. And I feel that we are left out of the key strategies that are being developed to deal with the issues. So I hope that that is one area that we could strengthen and really focus on getting our women folk more involved.
And we've been talking about climate change. What would you see as some of the gender issues associated with climate change? Do women are more affected than men? Are there gender issues there?
I think that we are more affected than men, quite honestly. I think because at the end of the day, when you look at the case studies and the circumstances, and I'm pulling on real experiences, at the end of the day, the mental health issues, who are the ones that are left to deal with it? Very often it's the mothers. And if you look at the school teaching population, school teachers in classrooms, a lot of them are women. When you look at the makeup at hospitals and clinics, a lot of the ones who are dealing with the patients are women. And some of those women who are dealing with the issues, they don't even understand how to deal with it because there is no education for them. They are also not involved very often in the process. And so they get left out. So that there are gender issues. Yeah. And I mean, I think we are getting there.
Right, of course.
But it's slow, and it's too slow.
Right.
Because what is going on is happening like this.
And of course, the men's incapacity to provide for family and so on is also affecting their mental health. I know, Dr. Nicholas, you've done a lot of work on the psychology of poverty and so on. We want to talk now about what is it that we can do and what should be done over the next 10 years. How do you see this whole mental issue playing out? It's very important for us in the region, given our own history of slavery.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime we get a chance to actually mention mental health on a panel, I get excited as a psychologist because oftentimes we don't think about the mental health component that is associated with many of the things that we're talking about, whether or not it's climate change or poverty or disasters and so forth. So it is important for us to really talk about that. But we're talking about mental health, like compound mental health issues. So if, for example, if we take the recent disaster in the Caribbean with Dorian, and if we only focus on Dorian, you miss sight of all of the other factors that are associated with that disaster. What does it mean psychologically to lose your home? What does it mean psychologically for you to lose your community? What does it mean psychologically for you to lose what you are familiar with? And what does it mean for you to not necessarily be able to find individuals, right? So there's a difference between the ability for me to bury somebody and then what does it mean when I couldn't find them to begin with, to bury them? What is the psychological impact of that? And then let's take all of that and add to the fact that there may be other issues going on, such as poverty. Because of my economic situation, I am not able to transfer from one place to the other. I'm not able to go to a different sector to get the kind of help that I need. I have to stay in a shelter, which is different than somebody who have an economic mean to be able to do that. And then for us, also in IT, so we add on top of that this sort of complex aspect of all of that in terms of other disasters that we've gone through. I mean, I just came back from the Bahamas just a couple of days ago, and it was interesting for me to hear our colleagues talking about the destruction of this first disaster experience, overall. And in Haiti, in Haiti, we deal with these disasters all of the time, right? And so what is the psychology of a people that is able to sort of mobilize and continue to endure, continue to move on and cope and adapt in the mix of lots of other disasters? So in my field of psychology, we talk about the importance of not talking about PTSD in the way that we talk when we talk about trauma, because there's no post in that trauma. And so we're talking about ongoing, continuous, complex trauma that is around, and that absolutely is necessary for us to address at all ages, right, in terms of how kids are responding and dealing with it, as well as the adults and so forth. So ultimately, as we're looking at this issue about the psychological impact, we have to not only think about the individual ways that we have to address that, but what are the systemic issues that also needs our attention from a mental health perspective. Absolutely. So that we're not only focusing on the sickness of the individual, but we recognize the sickness of a nation, the sickness of communities.
Right. So, and some of these things are embedded in our culture and our social expression. Recently, there was a study in Jamaica, a UNICEF study, that showed nearly 80% of our young people are being psychologically or physically abused.
Absolutely.
So those are real issues.
Absolutely.
Let me come next to Menelik. As a young man, how do you see these issues, psychological issues and otherwise, going forward? What needs to be done? What would you like to see done? And what, in fact, are you doing?
Yes, of course. So I think overall what needs to be done is continued investment in the Caribbean, whether that be economically, whether that be politically, whether that be socially, whether that be within your family. It's for you to continue to have faith and continue to kind of want to see the growth in the Caribbean. For me, the way that kind of translates is that at Princeton, we're kind of required to do a thesis and do independent research. And for my independent research, I've tried to kind of focus on social impact investing and how that could potentially work in the Caribbean. So kind of big of a background. A bit of the problem is that in the US, to be an accredited investor, you have to have a net worth of over $1 million US. And accredited investor means being able to invest in hedge funds, private equity firms, venture capital firms, the type of assets that have the most return. And because of that, essentially, people from the Caribbean diaspora have not been able to invest in the Caribbean in the ways that would provide the economic return that the Caribbean would have. So kind of what I'm trying to figure out is how can you create a risk-reward profile that makes the Caribbean attractive for social impact investing? Does that mean that we'll probably have to kind of decrease the risk? Does that mean that we'll have to increase liquidity in some of the investments? So that's kind of what I'll be kind of looking at and researching. And although that's what I'm focusing on for my senior thesis this year, I kind of it's something I've thought about since I first entered university, and it's something I'll continue to think about because it's something I'm passionate about, and it's something that I continue to kind of want to go after, especially as I enter the workforce next year and I start my first job. It's something that, it's a goal that I have, and it's something that I kind of want to lay the groundwork now. So that's how I see myself kind of staying invested in the Caribbean.
Well, I must say I sit here feeling so excited about the future of the Caribbean when you hear these young minds speak. And in fact, we are going to be talking a lot about social impact investing tomorrow as part of our conversation among partners here in the Caribbean. Grace, what do we have to do to fix these problems?
For us at Grace Kennedy, we have recognized that a response requires an adjustment in the business model. Because if it's just about a contribution through a foundation, we will not have the impact. But how are we organizing ourselves and the way in which we work so that we have a wider impact than just trying to generate a return to the main shareholder? So for example, in our money services business, we touch over 1 million persons across the Caribbean. And what we're focused on now is how we can help those persons not to just collect a remittance. It's very important to the economy, 17% of GDP for Jamaica, but how do we allow them and educate them so that they can have greater impact and also start to develop businesses? So for example, our business model for distribution has caused us to present our services through subagents. And we have across the region over 100 of these subagents who are now viable SMEs, who are now, and it's dear to my heart, passing businesses on to their children because the businesses are so developed. And through the partnerships, we have taught them about financial literacy, how to fund their businesses, and very excitingly, 32% of these SMEs are run by women, right? So we're seeing that, and we know the impact when the business is run by a woman in terms of, children and education and all of that. And so we're very focused around that. In fact, we have a bank that's only in Jamaica, and we decided to get off the wagon of just really focusing on consumer loans and talk about loans to the productive sector.
Great.
So we sat down and designed specific loans around specific areas, BPOs, persons who are in the transportation business, chicken farmers. In fact, we're now called the chicken bank, and we're kind of proud about that because it means that that chicken farmer feels comfortable coming to us to talk through those needs, and we're responding to those needs.
Okay.
So those are the kinds of things I think we need to be talking about. On the insurance front, I don't want to leave that. Since 2006, we have introduced what we call microinsurance, and microinsurance allows you to buy units of insurance starting from 50,000 Jamaican up. It does not replace traditional insurance. It's an immediate response. It's parametric. So when a loss occurs, we simply cut a check once there's a certain amount of rainfall or a certain amount of wind. And we have done this with international partners. In July, we had to pause on this because we need collaboration. So I'm really happy about this because this for us does not generate a positive return. This for us is just a way to help the communities because we recognize that if we help the communities, then we ultimately help the nation. And so we just are excited about the prospect
Okay.
of collaboration.
Well, of course, not a positive financial return, but a positive social
Social return,
return.
which ultimately
Absolutely. Will
create
right.
customers and all
And
of
of
that.
course, I hear SMEs listening in Jamaica and across the Caribbean. Some accelerated action there, some more investment in the productive sector, small businesses. Listen up, it's going to happen. Wonderful. All right, so lastly, Chaz, how do you see the future? What do we have to do to tackle these tough climate change issues? And what are you doing?
So to tackle this question, I would look at it from a short-term and long-term perspective. From the short-term angle, what I've been doing personally is that I'm involved in a lot of climate change-related societies and organizations, pushing for climate action through different avenues. And I also co-founded the Dorian Relief Halifax team, where I led over 80 other Bahamians in Nova Scotia, and we worked hard and collected over 370 boxes of relief supplies to send home.
Give him a round of applause there.
And
Great.
so
Wonderful.
I think the work that we've done there needs to be commended, and I also want to thank Dalhousie for covering the cost of shipping our stuff back home. Also, I think education and action are important things when combating climate change. Through education, I've been giving climate change presentations about climate change, what it's about, why it's important to act, and how people can really be a part of the solution. Also, I think action, like I said, action is important through being a part of different organizations. One such that I'm a part of is the Halifax 2050 group, where it's a collaborative effort of people working with local government to set to set goals of reducing our carbon emissions by 2050 to net zero in the area. And to segue into the long-term perspective of things, I think one of the first things that jumps out to me is being prepared, having evacuation procedures set in place. So when, not if, but when another storm or another natural disaster affects our region, we're ready for it. And I think it's important to also have shelters, purpose-built shelters in different communities, so that if there's not enough time to evacuate, people still have a safe place to go. Another thing that I think it's important to note is the fact that we must look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And looking at sustainable development, there are three pillars: environmental sustainability, social inclusion, and economic development, So with environmental sustainability, we're looking at things like mitigation and adaptation. Through mitigation, that's reducing our emissions, reducing the amount of pollution we put into the air, into the water, etc. But I think adaptation is more important for SIDS due to the fact that, according to the Inter-American Development Bank, SIDS around the world produce less than 1% of global greenhouse gases, and yet we get the worst effects of climate change. So I think it's important that we take adaptation seriously, going about it from natural ways like restoring our coral reefs, planting mangroves, but also man-made structures like seawalls and breakwater structures to protect our coasts. Social inclusion, when we look at that, I'm thinking of things like education, so making sure that Caribbeans know what climate change is about. They're educated on things like leadership, project management, and environmental conservation, so that we can be a part of the solution. When I think of economic development, I'm looking at diversifying the region's economy so that when another storm hits, we don't have to always depend on tourism. We could still have other avenues of revenue to come in to help us rebuild. And so, in closing, I think it's really important to recognize, Barack Obama said I think it was 2014 at the UN Climate Summit, that our generation is the first to feel the impacts of climate change, but the last to do something about it. And so I think we all need to get to work and to make sure that we have a future. Thank you.
Wow, I'm even more excited when I listen to the future, right? Really, it is inspiring. And it's so important because we know we have challenges, but I think we're up to the task. We're a creative people. We have tremendous resources in the region, and we can do it. But I know we have a saying in Jamaica, it takes cash to care. So I'm going to invite now one of the leaders in the Caribbean to come up. And Honorable Lasco's Chin is one of the pioneering firms in Jamaica who's been doing a number of philanthropy work and so on. And he, in fact, is leading and is part of the team that have come to New York. And around 16 organizations have literally pledged some financial support, initially just to start our philanthropy alliance. And so we're really excited to have corporate leaders in our midst. We have corporate leaders, we have philanthropists, and there's going to be quite a bit of financial, he has a statement he's going to make, right? And so he's going to give us that statement because this is a statement that really represents the corporate leaders in the region. And so we want to hear from him. I want to ask you to give him a round welcome of applause, the Honorable Lasco's Chin.
Morning, everyone. Isn't it wonderful to be at the United Nations, hearing everyone talking about how we can help the future of our beautiful Caribbean countries. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just been privileged to hear from leaders in academia, the media, and the NGO sectors on the urgent challenges facing the Caribbean. We certainly appreciate their candid responses and their discussion as they shared their expertise and experience. We are here in this sacred space of the United Nations, where world nations have been gathering since 1952 with one goal: peace. Peace for all nations, regardless of size, color, creed, and other factor that could divide. The land on which we stand now belongs to all nations. It is here leaders of the world have been coming to find solutions to their most pressing and urgent need in times of crisis, and to seek collaborative solutions for the most pressing issues. And today, we, the people of the Caribbean, along with leading international philanthropists, also come here under the arms, not the shadow, of the United Nations, where we are in the right space at the right time when the UN is in session. It is clear from the excellent discussion that the private sector has an undeniable critical role in mobilizing crucial financial resources to effectively respond to the developmental challenges the panelists addressed, among others. We know what we need to be done. However, a real challenge is a lack of adequate financial resources to put the legs to the discussion and transform them into real long-term sustainable actions. I am reminded of the adage that it takes cash to care in a sustainable way. The financial resources deficit is a stark reality that comes to the fore each time the Caribbean faces a disaster, natural or man-made. This reality has been at the core of evaluations and reasons for lack of progress in achieving these critical SDGs. Plain and simple, the Caribbean, like all developing nations, need adequate and sustainable financing to properly address these challenges. Our panelists can attest that for sure. The disastrous effects of climate change underscore this need. How will the Bahamas be rebuilt? When will the ordinary Haitian citizen experience basic necessities of life after devastation, like the earthquake. 9 years ago, remember, that's quite a long time. There are still risking the perils of high seas to seek basic life necessities, and in other countries too. The fires in the Amazon and the past weekend worldwide marches for the recognition of the impact of climate change on all aspects of life also underscore the urgent necessity for this Caribbean alliance to make the SDGs a reality for our island homes. The voice of the youth led by young Greta Thunberg is a clarion call for all of us in the Caribbean to awaken from our complacency and to do the right thing for future generations. We are in the right place at the right time for sure. Now is the time and place for Caribbean private sector leaders to agree and collectively respond to the financial issues that deter the achievement of our most desired goals for all our people. We must commit to the effort and to use another adage, put our money where our mouth is. And initial private sector leaders, many from Jamaica with Caribbean regional footprints, have decided that we will forge a strategic partnership through the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance to harness financial and other resources required to accelerate achievements of the SDGs in the Caribbean over the next 10 years. We have looked carefully at the current corporate social responsibility contributions to our respective foundations, and we have agreed that together we can achieve more by scaling up the activities aligned to the SDGs and Samona pathways and for forging new partnerships. Together, the following 16 foundations and companies have committed some of their existing financial resources to start this effort. Lasco Manufacturing, Lasco Financial Services, Lasco Distributors, Lasco Chin Foundation, Grace Kennedy Limited, Grace Kennedy Foundation, Island Grill, NCB, the largest bank in Jamaica Foundation, NCB Financial Group, VM Foundation, a very large company. All these are very large companies. Victoria Mutual Group, JN Foundation, Jamaica National Group, Muscles Group, Separate Foundation, CSC 2000 Foundation, and we intend getting many more hundreds to contribute. Yeah. The needs are immense and require significantly more funding than these foundations and companies can accommodate, but it is a start. To truly transform the societies of the Caribbean, we will need the ongoing contribution of many more private sector companies and the international funding agencies. It really is all on our deck to create and sustain the 2030 vision for Caribbean countries where we can work and raise our families. The task is huge, but not insurmountable. We can do it. Thank you.
Wow. Woo. We've heard it, yeah. So we are inspired by that. In fact, just 2 days ago, I was at the Clinton Global Initiative, and the estimate that they threw out there for just the collection of debris in Bahamas was about $400 million US, just collecting debris. So, and the estimate is about what, 8 mil?
7 billion.
7 million?
7 billion.
Billion dollars. So we're talking serious money. And we know that we have gotten firm commitments from these corporate leaders, and we're really happy for that, and we expect more. As an alliance, we will be working throughout the region. We'll be engaging other private sector leaders and other philanthropists, and we expect that we'll actively engage NGOs and others who will actually work with us to address the challenges. So I'd like to open now to the floor and to encourage questions, comments, anything you've heard that you want elaborated or anything you want to add. All right, and introduce yourself.
I'm Caroline Mahfood from the Grace Kennedy Foundation, and I was very interested in what Kieran was talking about earlier, and I wanted to find out what role does the media have to play in all of this, because that's your background, so I was wondering if you could share that with
And that's why the Media Institute of the Caribbean is here. We have a pivotal role to play. It is integral, and I think in talking to a lot of media owners across the region, there is that recognition. And so through the Media Institute, one of the initiatives, or one of our goals actually, is to support the work of SDGs and to tell the stories of SDGs throughout the region. And so that is where the media comes in, because it is about creating literacy at all levels of society. It's not just about the traditional and digital media anymore. We have to remember that we are impacting lives at all stages, and so the media is pivotal.
Okay, yes, another question. I think she has a mic. All right, just introduce yourself once you have the mic.
I'm Dr. Claire Nelson, President of the Institute of Caribbean Studies and the Futures Forum. I'm an engineer and a sustainable futurist. The question I have is about the construction then of a paradigm shift. We talked about the role of the media, and so I'm wondering if, as you contemplate this philanthropy alliance, we'll be looking at, for example, I've been talking about smart Caribbean as a language that can be very easily shared. Not just technology, but S meaning sustainable systems, M meaningful metrics like well-being, for example, A mean agile and adaptable agency, R robust resilience, and T transformative use of technology. Are you seeing that this alliance will be able to support, for example, peer-to-peer networks where solutions are already being designed on the ground, and that we will have more opportunity for what I call the outlaws, the heretics, and outliers in the Caribbean that are doing work on the ground to be able to get their ideas to the fore?
All right, anyone wants to take that?
It's loaded. I appreciate the question because it's so loaded and so layered and so forth. Let me just say two things as to why I and IT were particularly excited about this alliance and particularly this particular goal and partnership and so forth. As our Honorable just mentioned, when the Haiti earthquake took place 9 years ago, we're about to celebrate the 10th year anniversary of the earthquake in January, where we lost a little bit over 200,000 people as a part of that earthquake. The Caribbean did not respond. Our neighbor nations did not respond. International communities came all over. But the opportunity for us to build an alliance and a partnership that recognizes that we all have a role to play in responding and addressing the needs of all throughout the Caribbean is crucial. So we're excited about the idea of having an alliance that because no other group is more prime and ready to address our issues more so than we need to be able to do. So I recognize that we had, it's not to say that, when I say that the Caribbean didn't respond, I'm not talking about certain nations. Clearly we had some nations who responded. But I'm saying as an alliance, what the alliance allows us to do is to have the network of individuals who can absolutely be in a position to respond to what are the issues happening throughout the nation. So I do think it is an opportunity for us. It is an opportunity for us to think about what does well-being looks like across the nation. So we're talking about a mosaic of cultures. As we're talking about this alliance, we have to think about the inclusivity of what does it mean for all aspects of the region, which means that we have to be embracing our challenges that we call challenges in terms of our language challenges in terms of some of those areas. So I think the alliance is an exciting opportunity to mobilize in such a way. Yes, Grace?
Yeah, and if I may add to that, I totally agree. You know, as I said, we do business across 15 countries, and it is clear to me that we have far more that's similar than it's different, and you find solutions in different countries. And I think if we start to intentionally collaborate, there's so much more that we can achieve. And it will also achieve some other things that we've been working on for many years around coming together as nations. I think it's just a first step in that direction. But really and truly, I'm very excited about this.
All right.
And I would just like to add that there are several hundred foundations and charitable organizations in Jamaica. We have decided that singly, we are just a small speck. But if we collaborate and work together, and first of all, I understand that in the other countries, they don't have so many foundations as Jamaica. And as Jamaicans, we are going to encourage each country. We personally will go physically to encourage a foundation. The only way we can make some achievement and some result is work together. Yeah. And if all the amount of millions of dollars we spend together, we put it will be hundreds of millions of dollars. And the intention is to show the international agencies that the private sector is a responsible body. We are going to work together to put our funding together, and we are going to ask for help. And that's the only way little Caribbean, beautiful Caribbean, can make an impact. And we intend doing it. We are alive. We have young folks here. And the future looks fantastic. And it is up to us, old and young and middle-aged, to do it.
Absolutely. You've just heard real commitment there. Whoa. Great. Thank you so much, Chairman. We have another question coming.
Hi, I'm Nicole Pitter-Patterson from She Leads It, an NGO registered in Barbados, and also Caribbean Girls Hack. I have two questions, actually. One directed to Grace Kennedy. If you could tell us the name of the bank that you refer to and how you see additional initiatives that can be done focused specifically for facilitating women's economic empowerment. And then the other question is targeted to either of the youth representatives. What do you think can be done to make sure that you engage your Caribbean counterparts who are actually on the ground, in country, and how we can get away from the insular sort of silos that we have on a country basis, so make sure that we have a greater network of people working together?
Great question, yeah.
Yes, the bank which I referenced was First Global Bank, but you have just given me something to go back home and work on right now. Whilst we have developed a lot of SME programs, we have not skewed them particularly towards women. We have just focused on various sectors, and that is something that I have the power to fix very quickly. And so, Nicole, I promise a follow-up conversation on that. And so we will work through that along with it. But I just wanted to make the point, Honorable Lascelles, it must go beyond the foundations. It must be about the business model.
Yes.
Because the foundations are going to be limited. Yesterday, Earl Jarrett from Jane made a point around our tax laws and the limit in terms of what we can contribute via that medium. For us to circumvent that, because we know how long laws take to change in our countries. It's going to be around how in the way we work, how in the way we do business, we can impact more lives.
Quite so. And of course, there's an important role for the kind of legislation and policy framework to drive all of this. But, you know, there's so much in the hands of business. And I sit here again feeling very proud as a Jamaican with two competitors sitting by each other, Lasco and Grace Kennedy. They're big competitors in the region. Most people don't know this. And yet they're sitting together and saying, yes, this is much bigger than any single firm, any single individual. We all have to do it together. It is about improving humanity. All right, anybody else?
The youth?
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes, yes. Yeah. Yes, please.
All right, I can go ahead and start. So in terms of how you can kind of motivate the youth underground in the countries, me, like myself, to kind of do these type of things, I think the biggest thing is creating the space and creating the environment that encourages the youth to kind of go up and have that faith to do something that has never been done before. Because at the end of the day, most of the times in life, you can be what you can see. And it's very hard once you have not seen something done before to do that. So the only way that I think that can be done is to provide the support that, that can create the space for youth to kind of do things that can help the Caribbean in that ways, whether that be financial support, whether that be legal support with kind of getting organizations off the ground to do these type of things. So I think the biggest thing will be assistance in creating the space for youth to do these things.
All right, Chaz.
And to add to what Menelik said, I think it's important that as our generation uses a lot of social media, I think it's important to use social media for the good and to reach out to other youth in the Caribbean, because I'm sure there are a lot of young, aspiring, ambitious Caribbean youth like myself, like Menelik, who don't necessarily know how to begin. And that's how I started. I didn't know how to start, but after getting involved, meeting different people on social media and through going to different events, you start to network and get into that space. Like Menelik was talking about, providing a space for youth to come together. And I think it's also important to look at Caribbeans abroad, especially in universities, as in my university, I interact with a wide variety of Caribbean students. And so by using that platform to meet youth from other Caribbean countries, they can tap into their networks in their countries. I think it helps to create a larger network of Caribbean youth.
And your university is Dalhousie University. I know a lot of your friends are watching, right?
Yes, Dalhousie University.
Right.
Just a quick one to the panel. Last week, Friday, there was an international global climate protest. And when I looked at the Caribbean's response, it was almost zero. Why is that so? And how do we begin to increase the levels of engagement in the Caribbean?
Chaz, you want to speak to that? Anybody? Yeah?
I do know, I can say, because Haiti represents the population of Haiti right now, which is about 12 million people in Haiti. 60% of the population is under the age of 22. And so that's a significant piece for us, because it means that the people that we do need to mobilize and engage are our youth. And so there is a number of young folks in Haiti who've really taken the initiative of creating a number of organizations focusing on social issues and so forth. So as the protests were happening around climate change last Friday with the youth, there were a significant group of folks also in Haiti doing the same thing. Doesn't get the same media, on part because we may not have our media connection in the same way. Oftentimes the images that are out about Haiti tend to be negative, but there was a significant group of young people who are mobilizing around climate change, around economic development, around the importance of education also in the country.
All right, so quickly.
And to add to that, although one of the difficulties I know, especially for the Bahamas, is that it's the penetration of climate change is a bit difficult. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the Caribbean diaspora abroad are being very much involved in climate protests. Like part of my group, the Dorian Relief Team, they had a lot of people protesting in the streets for the climate strikes today. So I think we have to look at the Caribbeans abroad as well to help to influence and encourage people back home.
There's some financial capacity to get here as well to do the protest. All right, we
have
one
6
last
minutes.
question.
We have 6 minutes.
Okay, two questions, yes. All right.
Yes, hi. My name is Dennis Ramdahan. I represent the Vihara Foundation. We work in the area of poverty alleviation, climate mitigation. Now, 15 years ago, I started my work in poverty alleviation modeling with Haiti. Okay, and now we are doing some significant work in India, and we have great relationships with some mega funders that is really going to be pushing some heavy fundraising, and that money we wanted to flow into the Caribbean, obviously. But one of the things we always talked about from 15 years ago is a diaspora banking system. Right here in America, the diaspora is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, and we give that money through Western Union, and we give it through other various platforms. If we're actually putting the bank together right now, and I'm looking for experts. I would like to speak to you, I would like to speak to you, and the gentleman in the middle. I want you on this team, on this advisory panel, because if we launch the bank here in New York, all that money we lose through remittances freeze and all that that platform, that value, that can be a channel for sustainable investments in the Caribbean. So just wanted to make that comment. But one other thing I wanted to say also is for the young man who is from Bahamas, and anyone else who wants to answer, what's the entry point? When we raise all this money, I want you to seriously think, what is the entry point for that funding to be channeled for sustainable development, for rebuilding and climate resiliency? Because if you really think about it hard, the entry point is usually the government gateway. And the government gateway is always changing and fluctuating. You got to think very seriously.
Okay, so we'll just take 2 or 3 more questions quickly, and then we'll ask you to wrap up and just answer the question. All right?
Hi, for the panel, and especially the younger ones, as a mother of 2 children, 17 and 16, who, yes, social media, they're very involved. The question that they keep asking me always is, Mom, as young kids, we are so concerned about the fact that what is happening is not being addressed by the government. The biggest hiccup is always when we try to put something forward, we get bureaucracy, we get blocked. What is this alliance going to look to do to help the youth who have a huge voice, but especially in the Caribbean, we know that the youth are usually seen as our children, and therefore their voice may not be as loud as what they would like it to be.
All right.
How are we going to address it?
If we have one quick question and then we ask the panel now to wrap up, we're running out of time.
Okay, Rosalie,
Right?
I actually had one quick one, but it was to give support and to understand what Honorable Lasco said. There is a saying that there is the power of attraction. And coming out of the SDG Business Summit, the last thing the ICC Chamber said, we have to bring humanity back into business. So I think that what you've said, that we need to talk to our Caribbean entrepreneurs, our corporate leaders, both men and women, and even some youth, to bring us all together. And I think that's how we can do it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dave. All right, so I'll ask you all to just wrap up now in a couple of seconds. Give us your last closing thoughts, especially about the role of the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance.
I think definitely advocacy by the Caribbean Alliance is necessary with governments, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to say that, because I also sit as a vice president of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce, and I can tell you that I know what the obstacles are, but I know the power of advocacy. And as a region, if we got together to address that, I think we will get a lot accomplished, because this is the private sector. Our economies can't survive if we can't.
Thank you so much.
I believe very strongly that our motto in Haiti is l'union fait la force, and that the only way that we are able to accomplish things is that we have to come together as a collective. And I believe very strongly that this is an opportunity. This is the time for us as a Caribbean region to come together and really think about the issues. We know it well, what the issues are. We don't need more analysis on the issues. And this is an opportunity for us to act. It is an opportunity for us to put in some things in place that allows all of the nations within the Caribbean to prosper.
Thank you.
Hi, just to address the question a little bit about how to get the youth involved, I think not only with the youth, but from before you can even vote, I think it's important that we kind of place how important agency is for every person and how accountable you are to the problem. And I think that's how it's going to start, and that's how we all kind of work towards that goal, towards making the Caribbean a place where people want to invest, where people want to live, and where people want to grow.
Thank you.
The gentleman talked about forming a bank. That's not so easy, but what Grace and ourselves, and I'm very happy to hear, because Lasco Finance too, we have empathy for the poor people, and many of those people are unbanked, and we are providing microfinancing. We do everything to make it very easy for them, and we want to, and the foundation, Rosalie, are training people to be entrepreneurs, small people. So, and I think with the collaborative effect of all the foundation, of all the business, to be one voice, I think our friend Mr. Earl Jarrett here was talking about combining that we don't spend too much money on infrastructure or too much money on administration. Let's combine together, save the money, spend all that money on the poor and on the youth.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, and I'm just very conscious of the time. So for me, it's just really around focus. We do have the influence to get some of that advocacy done, but it's really around focusing on it and ensuring that what we have sat here today and committed to gets done. That when we meet again, we'll be ticking off that we have actually accomplished these things.
Absolutely.
That's really important to me.
Absolutely. Yes.
So to answer your question, sir, I think it's important to look at the fact that when devastation occurs, that's the best time to reevaluate what we have and to build properly. So by putting the money into renewable energy and efficient buildings and keeping the buildings to a higher standard of a building code would be the way that I would say to invest the money with the short amount of time that I have left. But to close out the panel, I think that what we're doing here with the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance is very important, and it highlights SDG 17 of partnership, and it shows that maybe as single islands, we cannot make that much of a difference, but as a united front, when we come together as a region, we can make a lot of noise and make a lot of progress. So I think...
Thank you so much. Please give them a round of applause. This is the face of the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance. It was truly a pleasure to be here, and we're going to rock it over the next 10 years. Thank you all so very much.
Take a photo. We want you to commemorate your time here in the zone.
We won't.
Quick. I expect this tweeted and posted everywhere. Hashtag madness. I'm going to come up after, don't worry. This is a very Caribbean thing going on here.
Come over here, yeah, come over here in the middle, yeah.
I'm just going to sit here. I love how comfortable everybody is up here. It makes me very, very happy. This is the people's house after all. It is the people's house after all. Guys, I know it's Friday, but you gotta hang with me. This is a transformational week for a lot of people, and for actually a lot of reasons. And it seemed like this might be a good time to share why it's been a transformational week for me, because this session really exemplified that. I was born in the Bahamas while my dad was doing his medical residency at Nassau. My parents lived in Jamaica while my dad was at medical school at the University of the West Indies. I knew you were going to do that on your own. Look at this excitement here. I'll start again, Caribbean people. I was just saying, this has been a transformational week, and you're seeing action happen right here. And I thought this would be a great moment to share why it's been transformational for me, and sort of explore the arc of the week. So I was born in Nassau, in the Bahamas, while my dad was doing his medical residency there. You can clap for that. They tell me I keep saying that, but it works, so why not? My parents lived in Jamaica while my dad was at the University of the West Indies. UE people. And I come from a long, long, long line of rural rice farmers in Guyana. So see, this is why my people are amazing. And on Monday, I had this kind of incredible out-of-body experience in this space. We had an Indigenous peoples panel up here, and there was an amazing gentleman, Michael McGarrell, from the Amerindian Peoples Association from Guyana, speaking. And I was sitting right over there listening to the panel, doing my notes and all the things that I do in the downtime, which is not really downtime. And it struck me in that moment that in all the UN events I've done, and I have done a dozen over the 4 years since the SDGs were launched, when I was right over there doing the launch event, I had never actually shared a UN stage with somebody who sounded like my own family. I'm going to try not to cry. So this today and this entire week really just exemplifies why this space is so special. This zone is special, and these conversations are special because there are people here who never get to be here. And I think if we can commit in this decade of action to bringing voices and ideas and innovations into this space that never get to be here, who are welcome here but don't actually have the resources to get here, who can't actually be part of these conversations because they don't have a live stream or a phone or any of those other resources, that is an amazing and incredible thing. And it makes me so happy to be able to support all of you in this, and it makes me so grateful for spaces like this one that the UN SDG Action Campaign and the UN Strategy Hub have created. So I just want you to give them a huge round of applause and say an incredible thank you. And say, hi, Mommy. We here, right, Caribbean people? With that, we get to take 10 minutes before our next session. And really, I love you guys. And I love everything that's happening here. So keep it up.